What if Subaru had arrived in Kararagi 9 months before the main story? Anastasia If, Chapter 1. Ricardo: will the boy really impress us again? Julius: I don't know, I just hope he hasn't done anything that will get Anastasia Sama involved in another financial problem. Anastasia: that financial problem wasn't that bad. After all, when you make so much profit that you end up having more work than you can handle, it just shows the success of the investments made so far, doesn't it? Mimi: huh? 4 out of the 6 exchanged words inside the main office of the Hoshin Company, the place belonging to one of the 4 candidates known by the Dragon Tablet, Anastasia Hoshin, known as the Merchant Queen, someone whose image was already extremely well known in Kararagi. They were now waiting in the large room all together, waiting. Waiting for whom? For one of the figures who had become quite famous within Kararagi, an inventor who in recent months had been quite successful with each of his creations, and most of these creations were investments funded by the very same lavender-haired royal candidate. That figure entered through the door. Subaru: Anastasia-sama, today I bring you a new invention, Halibel. And as always, he won't stop talking about how it's going to revolutionize the world. The person they had been talking about was none other than Natsuki Subaru, a teenager with black hair and sharp eyes, wearing a type of clothing different from anything they had ever seen. Though they had grown used to it over time, he was the inventor who had brought great profit to the Hoshin Company. Subaru had suddenly appeared in Kararagi's second city, Banan, located in western Kararagi, near its center. No one knew where he had come from, nor his intentions, but the first person to meet him in this world quickly became his friend. Halibel, the man the boy had nicknamed the Eternal Playboy, was considered the most powerful in Kararagi. It seemed like fate's providence, because they almost instantly got along from the very first moment they met. As the others later discovered, the young man possessed great knowledge of Kararagi's culture, despite having no prior awareness of where he was. He later even displayed knowledge similar to that of Hoshin, the founder of Kararagi's cities and the one who introduced the entire culture shared by its people. And the one who found him in the midst of all the chaos his arrival caused was none other than Anastasia Hoshin. When she first heard about the black-haired young man, she didn't pay much attention to the rumors, which initially seemed highly exaggerated when comparing him to Hoshin. But little by little, some of them proved to be true. One of the first things she discovered about the boy was what is now famously known as mayonnaise, a type of condiment that, when mixed with food, provided a new flavor, particularly complementing meat dishes. Not that she disliked it, but the taste wasn't bad either. The important thing was the profits obtained from selling the condiment. It quickly became popular in Banan, especially after Halibel started distributing it to people, having become the boy's first business partner. And Subaru's new creations kept getting more elaborate and increasingly profitable, for him and for those investing in him. With such an opportunity right in front of her, the candidate wasted no time in making an investment. If this was truly the beginning of a new Hoshin era unfolding before her eyes, though she was still reluctant to admit it, at the very least, their partnership had proven extremely profitable for both sides. Condiments, objects, events, all kinds of constructions and inventions made by him were turning out to be extremely lucrative for the lavender-haired candidate and her company, to the point where she found herself in a financial predicament she never expected, making so much profit that she had to keep reinvesting to avoid an overwhelming accumulation of money and work. This forced her to stay up for long hours drafting documents, even with the support of her most loyal companions. Ever since he became affiliated with the group, at least every few weeks, he would bring a new groundbreaking invention. That's why the eyes of the main members of her camp were on him: Anastasia, Julius, Ricardo, Hetero, TV, and Mimi, the small girl more excited than anyone else there, since Subaru always let her be the first to play with his new inventions, sometimes along with her brothers. Subaru: ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the revolution of writing, the typewriter. Placing the object on the center table, everyone could see the strange metallic device. a box with several small levers arranged in rows, and at the top, a roller holding a sheet of paper. Anastasia. Type, writer? Ricardo. Looks like just a bunch of little metal plates stuck together. He pointed as he observed it more closely. Subaru grinned mischievously, full of excitement. Subaru. That's the secret. Everyone knows how to write with ink and quill, right? Julius. Yes, it's a process that requires precision and time. Subaru. Exactly. You have to dip the quill in ink, write carefully, and wait for it to dry. Now, what if I told you we could write much faster without needing ink? Each of these little plates has a letter or a symbol. When I press one of them, that letter appears on the paper. As he spoke, he demonstrated for everyone watching, pressing a button on the keyboard, making the mechanism imprint the character onto the paper held in the roller. Most of their eyes widened in surprise, while Hallibell, already familiar with it, just let out an amused chuckle at their reactions. Subaru. Inside this box there are small levers called type bars. Each one has a letter engraved on it. When I press a key, the corresponding bar rises and strikes against this fabric ribbon with special ink, transferring the letter onto the paper. Hetero. Wait, so you can write just by pressing these little things? Subaru. Yes, and much faster than with a quill, he proudly proclaimed. Julius. That would eliminate the need for inkwells and drastically reduce writing time. But what about durability? Wouldn't it break over time? Subaru. Good question. The mechanism is made with simple springs and gears, so it can last a long time with proper maintenance. And if the ink ribbon runs out, you just replace it. Now, instead of spending hours writing reports with a quill, we can simply do everything by pressing a few buttons. These words seemed to spark great interest in the merchant, whose eyes appeared to shine more and more intensely as she looked at the machine and listened to him explain it further. Tivi. And how does it work completely? Subaru. Very good question, Tivy. First we have the keys, which are the parts we press to write. Each key is connected to a mechanical lever, which moves when pressed. This lever, in turn, activates a type bar, a metal rod with a small plate at the tip containing a raised letter or symbol. He pointed to the mechanisms. Subaru. When a key is pressed, its rod rises and strikes the ink ribbon, which is a fabric roll soaked in special ink. The ribbon is positioned between the rod and the paper, so when the tip of the type bar presses the ribbon, the ink transfers the shape of the letter onto the page. He then gave another demonstration on the paper already in the machine. Subaru. Now every time we press a key, the machine's carriage, this part here that holds the paper, moves slightly to the side. This happens thanks to a system of springs and gears, ensuring that each new letter is written in the correct space. He explained while showing the process as he typed more and more on the machine, using the styles of letters he had learned in this new world. Eventually, he reached the end of the line on the page. Subaru. And when we reach the end of the line, we use this lever to return the carriage to the beginning and move to the next line. This is how we can write entire pages quickly and efficiently. After finishing his explanation, he showed what he had written. This is the first official test of the first typewriter sponsored by Anastasia Hoshin. This made her even more excited as she thought about the possibilities before her. Mimi. So Mimi could write any letter to anyone, and Mimi could even write the stories she wants. Subaru. Yes, yes, my cute Mimi. As he said this, he patted the head of the orange-haired girl, who let out a happy sound, enjoying the affection, which was normal for him with her and her siblings. However, Hetero gave him a stern look whenever he saw Subaru doing this to his sister, out of a brotherly jealousy, something Subaru found extremely cute rather than annoying. Anastasia. How would mass production of such a machine work? Subaru. Now about how to manufacture it, we need a few key materials. For the next few minutes, he began explaining parts of the production process. Structure and mechanical parts, made of iron or brass, strong metals that can be molded into small gears, springs and levers. Some parts can be made of wood to reduce production costs. Keys, small wooden or bone discs, covered with a thin layer of ink or varnish to mark the letters. Type bars, small metal pieces engraved with raised letters. These can be crafted by specialized blacksmiths. Ink ribbon, a thin fabric soaked in charcoal or oil-based ink, rolled onto 2 cylinders so it can be replaced when necessary. Paper cylinder, a wooden or metal roll that holds the paper in place while writing. Subaru. The most challenging part of manufacturing is ensuring that all the pieces fit together correctly. The gears need to be precise, the springs must have the right tension, and the type bars cannot be misaligned, or the letters will print crooked. But if we set up a small workshop with skilled artisans, we can mass-produce these machines and completely change how people write documents. And the best part? No more waiting for ink to dry or risking smudging an important document. With this, writing is instant. His words continued to flow with the same confident tone since the beginning. He was genuinely happy with the invention he had created, and he could see Anastasia's face glowing with both satisfaction and excitement at the potential right in front of her. Anastasia. Natsuki-kun, I think you just made this greedy girl even happier. The candidates, Subaru and Halibel, walked together down the corridor of the company, Subaru between the two, with a smile on his face that didn't fade as he listened to the woman beside him. Anastasia. Natsuki-kun, your inventions are getting more and more elaborate, aren't they? You're becoming bolder with what you build and the investments you put into them. Subaru. Those who don't take risks don't progress, don't you think? Halibel. I wouldn't take those words too literally, Susan. That could bring you a lot of trouble in the future, don't you think? Subaru. Don't say that, Hal-san. That only makes things worse. It's like saying, it can't get any worse, because everything can always get even worse. He spoke in an exaggeratedly exhausted tone, striking a strange pose in the process, which earned a satisfied chuckle from the eternal playboy and a small giggle from the candidate beside him. Subaru, I just hope you liked my new gift for you, Anatan. Anastasia. Was it meant to be a gift, Natsuki-kun? Subaru. Yes. I saw that you were working too much, especially because of the profit you were making, so I wanted to help somehow. The typewriter is my gift to you so you won't waste so much time in that office anymore. That's why the first machine I made was for you. Halibel. Susan doesn't waste time giving modern gifts to win a girl's heart, huh? What a sly one. Subaru. Oi, don't say it like that, Halsan, or it'll sound like I'm trying to buy her love, and I already said that I'm going to win it. This elicited a deep laugh from the two around him. It was almost always this kind of response they got from the boy, with little filter or hesitation in clearly stating his intentions in a playful manner, even if they were serious. Anastasia, for her part, was amused by this. Ever since they truly got to know each other, she had already heard a similar remark from the boy, and she had made her own greed very clear to him. Subaru. If this is a battle of greed, then my greed to win your love will surpass yours and anyone else's. Those were his words when she tried to put an end to his romantic intentions toward her. It might have been persistence on the young man's part, but he had shown himself to be deeply focused on satisfying his personal greed. And the woman did not disapprove of such actions, as long as they did not harm her or interfere with her profits. On the contrary, the boy's actions had been of great help to her. It wouldn't even be a lie to say that, ever since his unofficial entry into her camp, as well as his role as a business partner in the Hoshin company, her fame had grown, and her usual profits had nearly tripled in the market-related areas of her business, and she could already imagine with great satisfaction the profits the typewriter would bring her, and how it would revolutionize the world from that day forward. But beyond the profits, Subaru had also proven to be an interesting figure in his own right through his way of acting, especially as a fraternal or even paternal figure to the triplets she had been taking care of for quite some time alongside Ricardo. He was someone fun to be around, with a light-hearted and playful personality. He also treated her kindly, with compliments, gifts, and gestures she knew weren't attempts to flatter her for business purposes. For an experienced merchant like her, it was quite obvious when someone was doing such a thing, and it was just as obvious to the point of being ridiculous how much of an open book he was about his feelings. Not that she found it undesirable, since she could manipulate him to a certain extent, even though she still repaid the favors of the profits he brought her. He even addressed her differently inside and outside of business. Anastasia Sama, Anatan. He used different names for different moments. He vehemently refused to call her by her nickname in front of Julius, finding his monologues about etiquette for a royal candidate far too boring to endure for more than 10 seconds. To her, his passionate actions and the things he did for her had not become undesirable at all. Anastasia, you shouldn't spoil this girl's greedy heart so much, Natsuki-kun, or I might actually start feeling something for you. Subaru, Anastasia, nothing, just thinking out loud. As she continued walking, ignoring the surprised and confused look on the boy's face, Halibel couldn't help but grin, having clearly heard the girl's murmured words and enjoying the unfolding of such a scene right before his eyes. Halibel, what new fun things will you bring in the future, Susan? Anastasia Eve for Chapter 2. Ricardo, what do you think about training the kid, Julius? Julius Gary, Ricardo, I heard he's been doing pretty well in spirit arts. Julius was a little surprised by the question, though he completely understood the reason behind his colleague's inquiry. In fact, he himself had been reflecting on the training he was conducting with his fellow spirit arts user. It had been a surprise when he discovered this fact about Subaru. Through his divine blessing, Julius could naturally attract spirits, just like Reinhard could. And due to his rare affinity with them, he was able to form contracts with his own spirits, the lesser spirits. There are various degrees of spirits, and they don't develop with time or age, but rather through accumulated power, among other factors such as a sense of identity and knowledge. Once a spirit accumulates enough of these qualities, it advances to the next rank. Spirits begin their existence as lesser spirits, beings that, before becoming spirits, are essentially balls of mana. Though they don't communicate with words, they can still transmit and receive emotions through mana. They can start developing knowledge, and if they gain enough power and a sense of identity over time, they may become regular spirits. There are also quasi-spirits, which still lack an understanding of words but can transmit emotions. They have a sense of identity and can carry out tasks assigned to them by their contractor. Once a being that was born as a lesser spirit and became a quasi-spirit accumulates sufficient power, it finally reaches the rank of a true spirit, a being with a developed mind and the ability to communicate. Though spirits typically follow liberal principles, most of them take on animal-like forms. However, in some cases they can assume a human shape, though some prefer not to. With enough time and accumulated power, they could even become great spirits. This was the fundamental knowledge of the spirit world for those with such an affinity, like Julius and Subaru. Julius had taught Subaru everything he could, even demonstrating his quasi-spirits the first time: Ia, Kua, Aro, Iku, In, and Ness, one spirit of each type of magic. Then he explained spirit contracts. Contracts, a type of promise between two parties. Contracts hold great significance for spirits. It's actually quite rare for someone to have a natural affinity with spirits and form a contract with them, and even rarer to do so with powerful spirits. Contracted spirits tend to reflect the magical affinity of their contractor. However, there are also those with exceptional skill who can form contracts with spirits regardless of affinity. Each spirit desires different conditions to fulfill a contract. Simple requirements, such as maintaining contact with their contractor, are usually all that lesser spirits ask for. A person who communicates with spirits, forming a contract and borrowing their power, is called a spirit arts user. Spirits and spirit arts users use spirit arts, which draw mana from the atmosphere around them. This process differs from standard magic, which draws mana from within a human, though the principles and effects remain the same. The strength of a spirit art user's magic depends on the power of the spirit they are contracted with. Although spirit arts users can form contracts with multiple spirits, extraordinary talent is required even to borrow the abilities of lesser spirits. Julius. As he continued walking beside Ricardo, staring at the ceiling while deep in thought, Julius recalled the conversation he had when explaining everything he knew to Subaru on the day the dark-haired boy met his first lesser spirit, thanks to the purple-haired knight. Saying that Julius was surprised would be an understatement. In a short period, Subaru had not only formed a contract with a lesser fire spirit, but also with spirits of multiple different types, just like Julius himself, proving his affinity. However, Subaru's talent did not stop there. In less than 4 months under Julius's proper training, Subaru's lesser spirits had already reached a level close to, or if Julius were to be completely honest, even equal to his own spirits. Their evolution was happening at an alarming rate. Not just one, but all of Subaru's lesser spirits were developing rapidly, a truly exceptional feat. Even Julius couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy at such an achievement, especially considering Subaru's unique condition, his undeveloped gait. Subaru's gait was comparable to that of a child or a newborn. That's why contracting with spirits was more beneficial for the dark-haired boy. It allowed him to avoid overstraining his gait, letting it develop naturally while still enabling him to use magic for self-defense or personal needs. Julius, I admit I didn't expect him to have such exceptional abilities when I first met him, but he's proven to be quite talented. Ricardo, is that so? I was surprised too. The kid keeps surprising us in every possible way. He comes up with crazy inventions that make a fortune. He's fun and great with kids. He made friends with Halibel Sama. He formed contracts with multiple spirits, and even impressed you, our great spirit knight. I wonder what else he'll be capable of in time, huh? Julius. Yeah, I'd rather not think about it. With the way things are going, people in Kararagi are already saying this might be the new era of Hoshin. If what Subaru said is true, that Hoshin came from the same place as him, since he can read the ancient texts left behind, then maybe we can't deny that possibility, and I don't even want to imagine how all the merchants around the world would react to that, especially our lady. Ricardo. We might be in for some tough times if we have to deal with multiple competitors chasing after him, huh? Luckily, we already have him on our side, and that's not a bad thing, don't you think? I always love seeing how happy Mimi gets when she eats the new desserts he creates and plays with his new toys. Though honestly, I kinda want to try them myself too, you know? And Annabo seems really happy with the mini chef. With the last comment, Julius couldn't help but crack a small smile at the mischievous tone his colleague was using when referring to the candidate. Both of them had to hold back when recounting what had happened in the capital, about Subaru, with Halibel's support, acting as a kind of hero to save candidate Emilia. This was also a positive point for their camp, but a strange one, so to speak, when it came to their relationship. Now, a rival camp had a debt to them, not just a life debt, since she had been saved from the Bowel Hunter, but an even greater one, as they had also saved the half-elf's insignia. The strange part, however, was how Ricardo teased Anastasia and Subaru, mentioning how heroically he protected the girl and acted like a gallant figure, even though Subaru insisted that Halibel was the one who had done most of the work. Ricardo, I think she got jealous. Julius Julius tried to suppress his laughter at the thought of the emotional mess they had now gotten themselves into. The door beside them opened. A young man with grayish hair appeared, dressed in green. Otto Suan, someone tied to the camp due to a debt he owed Subaru, his way of being saved from Anastasia, 200 sacred gold coins. Their relationship was quite amusing now, as Subaru always found time to make jokes at the expense of the gray-haired merchant. Otto, Julius-san, Ricardo-san, please come in. Natsuki-san is ready for his private demonstration. Ricardo, I don't know why, but I'm curious about what he wants to show us. Entering Subaru's private room, they were once again met with its structure. An incredibly spacious, large room with various inventions scattered all over the place. Mess wouldn't even begin to describe the situation. Even so, they didn't need to be careful when moving around, as there was enough space to walk through. Approaching the center of the vast room, they found Halibel and Subaru himself. The room's windows were covered, and the only source of light came from the candles burning at the center of the table, barely illuminating their path. Ricardo, why is it so dark? Subaru, for the demonstration. Now behold, he pointed to an exotic metallic structure resting on the table with coiled wires and a small glass vial containing a thin filament inside. This left them both surprised and curious. Subaru, you are about to witness the greatest revolution since, I don't know, the wheel. Ricardo, sounds like an exaggeration, kid. But go on. Ricardo gestured. Subaru, this, my friends, is a light bulb. He pointed to the object on the table. Subaru, and it will illuminate this world without the need for candles or magic stones. Have you ever heard of electricity? Judging by your looks, no. That's fine. I expected that. All right, think of it this way. The world has something invisible that flows through everything, from our bodies to the clouds in the sky. When you rub your hands together in the cold and feel a small shock when touching someone else, that's electricity. Julius, almost like mana. Subaru, more or less. The difference is that electricity doesn't need to be summoned. It's already present in nature and can be generated in various ways. Lightning is an extreme example. But I discovered, using some texts and my own personal creativity, a way to generate electricity in a controlled manner. He pointed to a set of metallic cylinders beside the light bulb. Subaru, here we have something called a dynamo. When we turn this crank, it generates electricity. That electricity travels through these copper wires and reaches the light bulb, where it makes a filament inside glow. With that said, he gave a thumbs up to Hallibel. Following the command, the black-furred wolfman started turning the crank while Otto began extinguishing the candles on the table, temporarily darkening the room. Initially, nothing happened. But then, the filament inside the light bulb glowed with an orange hue, gradually increasing until it became a dim white light. Ricardo and Julius's eyes widened slightly, while Otto and Hallibel had more reserved reactions, having seen it before. Subaru, this is light. This small filament inside the bulb is heating up so much that it starts to glow. But since there's no air inside the glass, it doesn't burn like a candle. Julius, with this, we wouldn't need candles or any type of magic. Subaru, exactly, and if we have an efficient way to generate electricity, we could light up entire cities, and this is just the first step. I hope I'm being ambitious at the right level, but over time I can replicate even more things from where I come from. I think you guys will love fans on hot days. This is going to change the world. With a playful remark, they continued to stare at the first light bulb ever created in this world, or at least the first one that hadn't exploded in Subaru's face, and no one would disagree with how right he was about the change this invention would bring, nor about how ambitious he was in creating new ones. To Julius, Subaru was proving himself more and more as someone truly interesting. Whether in spirit arts or his inventions, he now had expectations for the accomplishments this boy would show in the future, especially the first achievement he had already brought to the capital. Subaru, today I discovered something new about myself, a few words spoken in a dark tone which he did not understand, but he wanted to understand in the future, to ease his worries. Anastasia If, Chapter 3. Subaru, how are you enjoying your first time in the capital? Zarestia, yes. Sue, it's not bad at all. You said you've only been here once. Subaru, yeah. My first time was a bit complicated, but everything turned out fine. And you, Mimi? Mimi, Mimi has been here before with Ricardo and the siblings to get some things for Big Brother Chief's inventions. Mimi can show you the best place to eat now. The small half-cat figure spoke excitedly as she led the way for the white-haired woman and the dark-haired boy, bouncing forward with confidence. The group of four walked along the streets of the capital, with Anastasia strolling slightly behind them, a small smile on her face as she observed their interactions. Once again, Anastasia found herself reflecting on Subaru's influence up to this point in her camp. It had been only about 11 months since he joined her company, and by extension, her camp under their contract. Since Kararagi, he had demonstrated the ability to read Hoshin's ancient texts, revealing that they were both from the same place of origin. An astonishing number of inventions that could rival or even surpass those of the great Hoshin era in the past, and exceptional conversational and spiritual abilities, even in forming alliances. To give an example of this last point, Hallibel was a good reference, but the most recent was the figure dressed in white with matching hair. Zarestia, the great wind spirit, one of the four great spirits, and a resident of Kararagi, just as the other great spirits resided in their respective kingdoms, like the fire spirit in Lugunica. A powerful and widely known entity, The event that led to her becoming their ally had occurred less than a month ago. To summarize the events that took place in one of Kararagi's major cities, an Oni, Reyes, had stolen Zarestia's sphere to absorb its power. Her sole objective was to hunt down Subaru, having mistaken him for a member of the witch cult. If not for the combined forces of Halibel, Julius, and Subaru's spirits, she could have caused massive destruction in their first encounter. But that didn't happen. That's when they met Zarestia, in a weakened state. She wasn't in a dire, hopeless condition, just weakened to a certain extent. Still, she was powerful enough to be a threat to those she wished to eliminate. She sought to understand why that Oni had stolen her sphere and attacked Subaru, something they had no knowledge of at the time. So she decided to stay close to them until she could face the one who had stolen her sphere again. Several days passed, and surprisingly, Mimi, Halibel, and Subaru formed deep bonds with the great wind spirit among all the members of the merchant's camp, whether through conversations, shared moments, or even letting her experience the new era of inventions being developed in the camp. And Zarestia, like the little Mimi, loved tasting the new foods Subaru created, especially desserts or anything sweet, except anything related to alcohol for personal reasons. Zarestia eventually encountered Reyes again when the Oni tried to attack Subaru once more, and she ended up being defeated in a group attack organized by Subaru. This plan even involved a weakness Zarestia had mentioned: alcohol, which affected the Oni who had stolen Zarestia's sphere and taken on her appearance as part of her personality. This led to an explanation from the Oni about what had happened and revealed to everyone that Subaru carried the stench of miasma, like a witch cultist. This was quite surprising, since no one had imagined he had such a problem. But the issue was resolved. Subaru was cleared of Reyes' suspicions, Reyes was placed under Halibel's protection in the city of Banan, and Zarestia, her personality was complicated. During the time they had spent together, they had truly formed bonds. Zarestia had also become an extremely well-known figure across the city-states due to her incredible work as a bounty hunter, particularly in Banan, where she helped citizens with their problems through various jobs. But her true personality, with an endless thirst for battle, had returned, yet she had no desire to harm them or threaten the people she had met in Banan. So she formed a contract with Subaru. Subaru already had contracted spirits, with the potential to evolve into great spirits. This could have complicated the contract, right? But in reality, it didn't. She didn't require Subaru's mana or any energy. The contract was more of a formality. It was clear to everyone that she just wanted an excuse to stay with them. And so after many challenges, Subaru became the contractor of one of the 4 great spirits of the present era, the Great Wind Spirit. A force to be reckoned with by anyone who considered Anastasia's camp a rival, something the candidate herself used to her advantage. Like in the negotiations they had recently, they had been summoned to meet Roswal El Mathers in person, the sponsor of Emilia, the candidate Subaru had saved, a figure described as eccentric by many, especially by Subaru and Zarestia, who both agreed that if they ever saw the mage walking alone at night, they should keep him away from any small children. The mage seemed to have a great interest in Subaru, something that was obvious to Anastasia as a negotiator. Throughout their conversation, the eccentric man appeared to be testing Subaru, bringing up Emilia and asking what he thought of her. Subaru. She seems like a good girl, kind, cute. I don't dislike her, but I don't trust that Puck guy. That was his response to Roswal's attempts to get his opinion on the candidate. He focused on Puck, perhaps as a form of preemptive intimidation. Roswal then explained that Puck was the great fire spirit, known as the Beast of the End. Subaru and Mimi's reactions at that moment were the same. Wide eyes and shouts of surprise upon hearing the mention of such a title as the Beast of the End. Although the lavender-haired merchant noticed that Subaru's reaction seemed somewhat fake, as if he were merely filling in the gap for something he had already been deliberating internally. But Anastasia partially understood the veiled threat. Since she was meeting with a rival royal candidate to the one she sponsored, in the merchant's perception, Roswal was using this opportunity to showcase his protégé's potential and the power she possessed. A way to keep Anastasia in check, as if pointing a blade directly at her neck and warning her not to act recklessly against Emilia. something her years in business had already taught her, and such a threat was received as an outright insult due to how blatantly it was being displayed. So to counterattack him in a friendly manner, she calmly brought up the statuses of Julius and Subaru as spirit contractors, their affinities, their potentials, and in the end, mentioned Anastasia, whom Roswaal only seemed to recognize once she explained her true identity. Laying the cards on the table, not only did she have two knights, since Subaru did not hold that title, who were spiritual contractors, but her camp also had the protection of Halibel, the eternal playboy, a title given by Subaru, which he enjoyed flaunting. One of the four strongest individuals in the Four Kingdoms, comparable to Reinhard, as well as a great spirit who could be on the same level as the fire spirit under Emilia's command. Presenting it as a battle of power. Her camp's main combatants, Roswaal, Emilia, and Puck, while Anastasia's camp had Halibel, Julius, and Anastasia. And that didn't even take into account Subaru and his spirits, Julius's spirits, or the Iron Fangs members, nor Roswaal's well-known maids who accompanied him. If all of those were factored in terms of numbers, combat skills, raw power, strategy, versatility, and dexterity, the advantages leaned toward Anastasia's group, especially considering Halibel's cloning ability, which only further amplified his power. Roswaal seemed to reluctantly accept this fact, earning the merchant a genuine victorious smile. A battle would be useless if he did not have enough power to win, or, in the event of a loss, could not recover from the losses incurred by facing her in a full-scale war between candidates who hadn't even met each other yet to warrant such a confrontation. Well, if she were honest, perhaps there were two reasons for a fight, both involving the black-haired young man who, unaware of the girl's internal thoughts, was happily walking ahead, chatting with the two girls. The first, commercial greed. She could clearly see how interested Roswaal seemed to be in Subaru's capabilities, mentioning his achievements, inventions, and how he was revolutionizing the modern world. In particular, he expressed gratitude for the introduction of typewriters into commercial use. This, of course, piqued the merchant's interest. It was nothing new for people to try and find ways to bring Subaru into their personal business ventures. Sometimes she handled it, but other times Subaru took care of it himself. Like in this in-person meeting meant to reward Subaru for saving Emilia and retrieving her insignia. He outright rejected Roswaal's obvious bribery attempts, as the clownish-looking mage subtly tried to lure him into his camp, either as Emilia's knight, given his skills, or as a magical inventor under his protection. Subaru, sorry Roschi, but I already made a personal promise, I promised myself that my heart, my mind, my inventions and my abilities will put Anastasia Sama on the throne, and I plan to see it through to the end. After all, what guy wouldn't want to see the girl he likes sitting on the throne as a queen? That was his counter-response to the offer. Even now, remembering it made her smile a little. Eridna, you were really happy when he said those words, weren't you? Anastasia, I don't know what you're talking about. After all, he's said similar things before, hasn't he? He already established his goals with me and our business. Eridna, his goal is you, don't forget that. Whether you return his feelings openly or not, remember, that won't matter to him. He'll help you either way. At her spirit's words, she couldn't help but huff, irritated by the provocation. Which led to the second reason, one raised by the artificial spirit, jealousy, over the sweet words he had directed at the half-elf at the start of their conversation. Something Anastasia claimed not to feel, even though Eridna called her a liar, refusing to admit openly that Subaru was truly making progress in winning a place in the heart of the greedy merchant. And the candidate couldn't counter-argue when they claimed she was happy to hear Subaru refuse Roswaal's offer. She would insist it was simply because it secured her commercial ventures with a young dreamer, though she couldn't help but replay his words in her mind. I promised myself that my heart, my mind, my inventions, and my abilities will put Anastasia Sama on the throne. What guy wouldn't want to see the girl he likes sitting on the throne as a queen? And the enthusiastic tone he had used when saying them. As they walked in search of a place to have lunch somehow, her day already felt satisfying, both from the negotiation they had at the meeting with Roswaal, whose debt would extend a bit longer until they found something they truly wanted from him, and from Subaru's declarations. The next day would be when she would meet Emilia in the royal hall, accompanied by Subaru and Zarestia, to Julius's dismay, and once again she felt jealous seeing their interactions. However, she was also slightly charmed when Subaru nearly fought Roswell after the latter made a formal display to showcase Puck's power in the royal selection hall. An event interesting to say the least. Later, Julius ended up lecturing Subaru and Zarestia for hours, the latter having torn Roswell's clothes apart with wind magic, leaving him half naked at Subaru's request, and for her own personal amusement. Anastasia IF Epilogue. Anastasia Eve Epilogue Part 1. Otto. Adjusting himself in front of his private mirror, he observed his personal kimono, made for him by his current employer, or slave driver, as Otto affectionately nicknamed him, for the highly important event that would take place today. Not that it was unpleasant to wear, but it was simply strange for someone who wasn't used to it. Yet he had no choice. Otto Suen's kimono flowed smoothly around him, its emerald-toned fabrics captured by the light around him. Made of lightweight, luxurious silk, it was adorned with golden patterns that intertwined like gusts of wind dancing across the fabric. The sleeves were slightly wider than usual, allowing for elegant movement while still maintaining the practicality needed for a merchant constantly on the move. Tightly fastened around his waist, a deep red obi created a beautiful contrast with the vibrant green of the outfit. Tucked delicately between the knots of the belt, a small white feather was attached. A subtle yet striking detail, reminiscent of the iconic hat he always wore. The edges of the kimono were finished with fine golden embroidery. Resting gently over his shoulders was a dark green fabric hood attached to the kimono's collar, though it wasn't large enough to cover his entire face. Otto. Natsuki-kun really has quite the sewing skills. Placing a hand on his chin, he massaged it while observing himself. He didn't find the kimono he had received as a gift bad at all. One of the handmade kimonos sewn by Subaru himself. He really didn't find it unpleasant, truly. No, he would still prefer his usual clothing, which he had been wearing for years. The outfit wasn't uncomfortable. Somehow it truly wasn't uncomfortable. That was one of the things he could deduce about Subaru's tailoring skills, much like his other abilities, which Otto had properly noted during the time he spent by his side. Unfortunately for Suen, that time had been under hateful and unfortunate pretenses, burdened by a massive financial debt. No more than a year ago, specifically a little over a year and a half, he met him when, along with other merchants, he began engaging in business in Kararagi. These dealings involved the production of the now famous typewriters. These machines had started gaining immense popularity among nobles for writing documents, stories by writers, archives, and more, something that was generating massive profits. Otto was never truly a greedy person, but what merchant wouldn't be interested in an opportunity to capitalize on something that seemed like a guaranteed fortune? He, like many others, was drawn in. But his terrible luck followed him. While making his delivery of ink and essential components for the writing mechanism, he lost a vast quantity of them in an accident. The total loss amounted to a staggering 200 sacred gold coins, as calculated by the lavender-haired merchant queen, an amount so immense that it nearly gave him a heart attack when he realized the depth of his financial ruin. For the first time in his life, overwhelmed by profound fear as he was stared down by that elegantly dressed lady with her calm gaze, he saw his life flash before his eyes. It was as if all his memories, from the earliest moments he could retain, passed in a rapid blur. It had not been a particularly prosperous life, at least from his rational perspective. There were parts where he cursed his luck, just as he cursed his divine protection, when thinking about why his childhood had not been as good as the other children he had met and remembered. His life as a merchant was also riddled with misfortune, mishaps, and embarrassing or complicated situations. Yet, it was still his life, a life he wanted to say he was proud to have lived. He was on the verge of being killed, forced into debt slavery under one of the royal candidates, until Natsuki Subaru appeared and saved him from that fate, agreeing to take on Otto's debts if the merchant accepted a job as his assistant. Desperately, Otto accepted, eager to rid himself of the colossal debt he had amassed. But soon, he would regret it due to the events that followed. The job itself wasn't all that bad. But the insults, the constant jokes about being forgotten, those complicated their employer-employee relationship. Yet, in comparison, Subaru was a lenient boss who allowed Otto to act freely, express himself, and even enjoy himself however he wanted, including drinking, without fear of mistreatment or being fired. Knock, knock. A knocking sound drew his attention to the bedroom door. "Otto, I'm coming." Saying that, he walked to the entrance of his room. Standing in front of his door were two figures, the Jukulius brothers, Joshua Jukulius and Julius Jukulius. They too wore kimonos crafted by the most well-known figure in Anastasia's camp, the black-haired young man who had titled each outfit uniquely. Joshua's attire could be summarized as elegance of tradition. Joshua's lavender silk kimono draped smoothly over his slender frame, the impeccable fabric reflecting his noble origins. The soft lilac tones blended with subtle golden details, forming intricate patterns of lilies and waves that wove across the sleeves and hem of the garment. The cut was perfect, tailored to his slim build without sacrificing the fluidity of movement. Around his waist, a black brocade obi adorned with silver threads shimmered under the light, keeping the garment securely fastened. The knot was impeccably tied. Over his shoulders, a sheer black silk overlay added a layer of formality to the attire. The fabric swayed gently, enhancing his already distinguished presence as if it were designed to move with him, ensuring every motion exuded grace. Meanwhile, Julius's kimono could be described as honor woven in silk. The kimono was a reflection of his very essence, noble, imposing, and impeccably refined. The deep blue silk fabric seemed to capture the light upon its surface, subtly shimmering in the ambient glow. Golden and silver embroidery wove across the entire garment, forming intricate depictions of dragons and lotus flowers, a bloom from Subaru's homeland, symbols of strength and purity. The high, well-structured collar of the kimono added a touch of formality, while the wide, elegant sleeves gave his movements a regal air. The cut was tailored just enough to highlight his imposing stance and well-defined physique, without compromising the fluid grace characteristic of such attire. The obi, a reinforced fabric belt, was a vibrant gold, tied perfectly at the back with a knot that symbolized his position as one of the most talented knights of Lugunica. Over his shoulders, a blue-gray overcoat made of slightly heavier fabric completed the outfit, giving him an air of respect and military discipline. Figures with the same hair color, elegantly dressed. "Joshua, I see that you are prepared for Anastasia-sama's celebration. The outfit designed and sewn by Subaru-san really suits you well, Otto-san. I must admit that he truly did a good job with the attire for this important event. Even though he is not really well-versed, nor elegant, nor capable of presenting himself as a refined person, something he loses out on extremely when compared to my brother." Otto. Otto gave a tired look while Julius merely offered a nervous smile at the younger Jukulius's words, as it was well known by everyone. Joshua held great respect for Julius, admiring his abilities since they were younger, especially when he became a knight. A spirit knight with the title the Knight of Knights. Someone admired by many, particularly his adoptive brother. However, he had issues with Subaru, both because of his lack of discipline, his unrefined way of speaking and acting, and also because of the circulating rumors that the young inventor was stealing Julius's glory as Anastasia's knight, diminishing the shine of the fact that his brother was the knight of the merchant queen. Joshua disliked that Subaru lacked his brother's elegance, yet still managed to stand out and accomplish things that increased the fame of the candidate they both served, something he had expected Julius to do. Even though they sometimes got along when circumstances demanded, it wasn't uncommon to see them talking properly, with Joshua trying to correct Subaru's behavior, a behavior Subaru described as tsundere. And after discovering the meaning of such a term, Otto couldn't help but find Subaru hypocritical, since Subaru behaved the same way in most of his interactions with Julius, almost like a complete cycle where Joshua acted that way towards Subaru and Subaru acted that way towards Julius, but in an opposite manner with each brother. Otto saw how Subaru treated Joshua the same way Julius treated him. From an external and internal perspective, the three of them actually got along quite well. Julius, it's time to go. Subaru should have everything prepared, and I believe Anastasia Summer must be excited for the surprise as well. Joshua, I hope it's at least somewhat interesting. Do you have any idea, Otto-san? Otto, I can't say. He forced me to keep quiet. Joshua, I figured as much. Otto sighed tiredly as he stepped out, pressing the so-called switch to turn off the electric light in his room, a thing that had become quite common within Hoshin's domain. Anastasia Heave, Epilogue Parte 2, Halibel. When he met Subaru, Halibel admittedly didn't expect much from the boy he found lost in the city. It was a coincidence, a twist of fate, perhaps. He wouldn't have thought about it if not for everything that happened afterward. Revolutionary inventions, spiritual abilities, the capacity to gather people around him, as well as leadership skills. If his normal abilities weren't enough, it was he who led Zarestia and the Iron Fang to the capital almost a year ago, over 6 months ago, in the hunt against the White Whale and Sloth, bringing more fame to the Hoshin camp, as well as his company beyond Kararagi and into Lugunica. It seemed that the young man with black hair and unusual clothing was destined for greatness, whether by himself or by helping and being helped by others, like his current allies. But what Halibel didn't expect was how close they would become since the day they met. The strongest in Kararagi did not dislike the boy. He truly didn't. They started getting along very well. Over time, Halibel even joined Anastasia's group, a figure he had previously known through Ricardo, becoming part of her camp because Subaru had established a business partnership with her, and then became interested in her as a woman. If Halibel were to be honest, there were 2 reasons. 1, he wanted to look after the boy he had befriended. 2, he saw how exciting his life would become from that moment on, thanks to the young man with black hair. Snapping out of his thoughts and back to the present situation, in a private room, 5 distinct figures stood, all demi-humans, 3 small figures and 2 larger ones. The triplets and the 2 wolfmen watched as they dressed in their tailored clothes for the event that would take place in a few minutes, while the older ones observed the younger ones. Mimi, what do you think? Huh? Didn't Big Brother make a beautiful kimono for Mimi? Hetero, Mimi really looks very pretty. Tivi, I can't deny that the work Natsuki did was really good. Magic, spirits, and inventions like tailoring. He could really do well as an independent merchant, don't you think? Ricardo, yeah. The kid really did a great job with you all. And with us, don't you think? I didn't think he could make this handsome guy even more handsome. Halibel, I didn't think it was possible either. I really like my new outfit, though I would still prefer my everyday kimono, he said as he examined himself and the others. Mimi wore something titled A Mischievous Glow. The kimono, made from soft, slightly shimmering fabric, had a pearly white base, as pure as freshly fallen snow. Over this immaculate background, vibrant patterns in shades of orange and gold wove across the fabric, forming elegant cat paw prints that seemed to dance along the sleeves and hem. Small details in aqua green, the same color as Mimi's bright eyes, were delicately interwoven into the design, bringing harmony to the ensemble. The sleeves were long and loose, designed specifically to give a fluid and graceful air to her movements. But the most charming detail was in the obi, a well-fitted bow in a vibrant aqua green, with fine embroidery of tiny sakura flowers and minuscule golden bells that would jingle softly with every step. As she twirled in excitement while wearing it, Mimi felt the fabric wrap around her small feline body like a soft cloud. At the back, an adorable detail made her tail wag eagerly. Subaru had sewn a small fluffy decoration in the shape of a cat's tail onto the obi bow, perfectly matching her real orange tail. The kimono was not only beautiful, but designed to allow her the freedom and joy she always exuded, while TV's would be contained wisdom. Among the many kimonos he was sewing, TV's required a special touch. He knew the Catman wasn't one for unnecessary ostentation, but he also couldn't make something too simplistic. It needed balance, sophistication without excess, class without drawing too much attention. TV's kimono was elegant, refined, something that perfectly matched his calculating and intellectual personality. The base fabric was a deep navy blue, almost black, reflecting his serious demeanor and preference for enclosed environments, away from his siblings' mischief. In contrast, fine golden lines formed subtle geometric patterns along the sleeves and lower hem, reminiscent of precise diagrams, like those a scholar would draw while compiling knowledge. Small, discreetly embroidered symbols along the hem, such as tiny scrolls and open books, added a personal touch without compromising elegance. The obi sash was a deep aquamarine, a subtle nod to Tyvi's eye color, bringing a sense of continuity and unity with his siblings. The sash was adorned with a small golden brooch in the shape of a fox, symbolizing his intelligence and loyalty to Iron Fang. The sleeves were slightly adjusted, allowing for a fluid drape but without excess fabric that might hinder him while writing or organizing documents. An extra detail was the light golden chain attached to TV's monocle, subtly connecting it to the kimono, a refined touch that enhanced his intellectual appearance even more. And the last of the siblings, Hetero, the silent guard. The main fabric was a soft orange leaning toward an amber tone, a color that evoked both the warmth of his presence and his undeniable connection with his siblings. Unlike Mimi's vibrant energy, the chosen shade was more subdued, conveying maturity and balance. To complement this base, delicate aquamarine arabesques wove along the kimono's edges, like gentle wind currents or leaves carried by the breeze. This detail not only added a touch of sophistication, but also highlighted Hetero's expressive eyes. The medium-length sleeves draped smoothly over his arms, ensuring freedom of movement without compromising the elegance of the piece. The obi sash was carefully chosen in a moss green color, with a subtle burnt gold finish, a shade that reinforced the sense of firmness and responsibility Hetero carried. The sash was precisely adjusted, without exaggeration, bringing a perfect balance between sophistication and practicality. However, the detail that made the kimono truly unique was discreetly embroidered on the back of the garment. There, drawn with subtle golden threads, rested the emblem of a sword piercing through a pair of wolf tracks. The triplets admired themselves as they looked at the final work Subaru had crafted for them. Usually, they were adorned in different ways, but the most meticulously designed among them was undoubtedly Mimi's, as almost everyone knew she was Subaru's favorite, whom he always spoiled in whatever ways he pleased, a fact that even irritated Hetero, as it was not uncommon to see Mimi sitting on Subaru's lap, receiving head pats. Ricardo watched them with a satisfied smile at their excitement, while also glancing at his own, which the boy had simply titled Great Wolf. The outfit was made of thick, durable fabric, yet it did not lose its smooth drape. The base was a deep burgundy red, like the twilight of a recently ended battle, while golden details shimmered along the sleeves and hem, forming tribal markings inspired by wolves and flames that seemed to dance across the fabric. The kimono did not follow the traditional style. Subaru knew Ricardo wouldn't feel comfortable with long, heavy sleeves, so he made a sleeveless version, allowing the warrior's muscular arms to remain free, as if always ready for battle. The obi, the sash tied at the waist, was black with golden details, bringing balance to the ensemble and maintaining a touch of authority. Additionally, a discreet Iron Fang symbol was embroidered on the lower back, a small but significant detail for the pack leader. To complete it, Subaru added a personal touch, a golden chain attached to the obi, lightly dangling at the side, matching the wild gleam in Ricardo's eyes and giving him the air of a fearless commander. The outfit earned some playful remarks and compliments from Ricardo for Subaru's hard work in preparing it. His gaze then wandered to Halibel's new kimono. Even Kararagi's strongest did not escape a revamp, as Subaru liked to call it, for the upcoming nighttime event just a few minutes away. The Mist Wolf. The piece was as black as a moonless night, reflecting his enigmatic nature, yet adorned with subtle patterns of purple and golden mist rising along the hem and sleeves, as if his very presence was always shrouded in mystery. The sleeves were long and frayed at the edges, a deliberate detail by Subaru to match the Wolfman's scruffy and casual appearance. However, the biggest surprise was on the back. A stylized tribal wolf symbol emerged in gold over the dark silk, as if sculpted from the night itself. The obi, a wide belt that held the kimono in place, was an aged gold with small purple lines forming geometric patterns reminiscent of Hallibel's tribe markings. The dark tone of the gold harmonized perfectly with his predatory eyes. He pulled the sleeves up slightly, satisfied to see that the garment did not restrict his movements. An elegant kimono, yes, but still functional, perfect for a man who carried the honor of his race and the freedom of a night wind. Hallibel, the kid really went all out, didn't he? Ricardo, you know exactly why, don't you? Ha ha ha, I should be mad as Anabo's guardian, but no, I can't help but admire the way he acts based on his feelings, and at the very least he makes everything fun. Ha 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 ha. Hallibel, exactly. Arf, that boy. Blowing smoke from his kiseru, Hallibel nodded in agreement with Ricardo's words and his amused tone when speaking about Subaru. The two adults couldn't help but be entertained by the boy's enthusiastic way of doing things in the most extravagant ways possible. And he had promised that tonight would be unforgettable. Anastasia Ivi, Epilogue Part 3, Anastasia. Anastasia. Natsuki-kun really put a lot of effort into today's outfits, don't you think? Not that I'm going to complain about the work he put in. I'd rather not think that he went through all that effort for nothing. Rise. Don't worry, Anastasia-sama. While he was working, Otto-sama and I did as you asked and made sure he didn't overexert himself. We even tried to help him where we could. Zarestia, Sue really puts in a lot of effort. I won't complain about the gift, but I feel like I could have made it myself, as a spirit. But Sue really did an impeccable job on this. Yes, very diligent. Ugh, that weird guy. Recalling the archbishop she had faced, Zarestia couldn't help but evaluate the kimono Subaru had crafted exclusively for her, the chaotic beauty. Unlike the others, her attire seemed to glow on its own, as if made of liquid light. A pure, immaculate white, the fabric was as soft as freshly fallen snow, gliding over her skin like a second natural layer. The neckline was modest, yet subtly hinted at her femininity, while the long sleeves swayed gently with her movements. However, it was in the details that Subaru's true craftsmanship shone through. Lime green streaks spread across the fabric, resembling gusts of wind charged with energy, forming delicate spirals around the waist and flowing down to the hem of the skirt. Unlike Zarestia's original kimono, this one retained a short skirt, but added an extra layer of translucent fabric, creating an ethereal effect as she moved. The obi was silver with greenish reflections, shimmering at different angles of light, as if a piece of her own light sphere had been sewn into her waist. At the center of the knot, a lime green crystal pendant was fastened, capturing the gaze of anyone who approached. The other two couldn't help but admire her beauty. If she was already naturally stunning, her radiance was further accentuated by the delicate craftsmanship of the kimono she now wore. But the same could be said for the other two, the merchant and the oni. For Anastasia, the cunning elegance, the pure white fabric like freshly fallen snow, served as the base for a delicate pattern of hand-painted plum blossoms in soft teal shades. Tiny golden stars were interwoven among the flowering branches, reflecting light whenever she moved, a detail that echoed the hairpin adorning her bangs. The long flowing sleeves had floral embroidery at the tips, almost imperceptible, hidden like secrets waiting to be discovered. The hem of the kimono displayed a subtle gradient from teal to white, giving the impression that Anastasia was wrapped in an enchanting mist. The obi, a richly decorated fabric sash, was a deep purple, velvety to the touch, with intricate golden lines winding along its length. These lines gleamed like molten gold under the light. At the center of the obi, a golden coin-shaped pendant swayed gently with each step. To complete the ensemble, a thin, almost translucent blue silk scarf was elegantly tied to the obi, moving with the breeze as if it had a life of its own, a simple yet striking piece. And in Rise's case, things were a little different. The Oni girl felt unworthy of receiving a gift from someone she had once unjustly tried to kill, blinded by an instinctive reaction to his unconscious scent. However, her desire to reject the gift was ignored by the dark-haired boy and the rest of the camp. After much insistence, she accepted it, at least to wear for the event. Hers was different, but just as elegant, the silent fury in silk. The dark silk, in shades of midnight blue and deep gray, enveloped her body with a cold elegance, like the silence before a storm. Subtle embroideries of raging waves and turbulent clouds adorned the sleeves and the hem of the garment. The long flowing sleeves, common in more formal kimonos, gave her an air of restrained nobility, but the way her obi was tied, a deep red belt with subtle flame patterns, was firm, almost military, as if serving as a reminder of her mission. The knot at her back was simple, devoid of extravagant embellishments, reflecting her practical and straightforward nature. Over the kimono, Reyes wore a thin haori, a short black silk coat with ice blue details, its edges slightly frayed. The three women were beautifully dressed. The elegance of their kimonos enhanced their already natural beauty, so much so that, in Subaru's own words, they outshone the garments themselves. They walked gratefully through the corridor, illuminated by the lamps crafted through Subaru's hard work. These lamps pushed back the darkness outside, while casting a warm light on their outfits. As they walked, they soon arrived at the entrance, where the others were waiting for them. Ricardo, "Fee you, mini-boss really did a great job." Mimi, "Yes, yes, lady is super hyper pretty, and Tia and Zay too." Halibel, "I won't disagree, there's no argument against it." Julius, "Truly, you all look stunning in your outfits. Zarestia-sama, if I may say, you look magnificent, as do you, Anastasia-sama, and Reza-san." As the four figures openly commented on the trio's beauty, the others either remained silent in awe or chose not to speak upon seeing them dressed in such a way. The ladies, however, reacted differently to the compliments. Anastasia maintained a neutral expression with a small smile. Zarestia appeared indifferent, though secretly pleased, and Reyes was visibly flustered by the words. "Anastasia, thank you for the kind words, Julius, but I think it's time we head out to see the show Natsuki-kun has prepared for us." Otto, "I can guarantee it will be quite thrilling." He spoke with a small, contained smirk. Subaru, "I see everyone's here. Are you all excited?" Mimi, Mimi is." Shouting back with just as much enthusiasm as he did, the girl in her kimono jumped up and down with her fist raised, as if to emphasize the me, which only fueled Subaru's excitement, making his smile grow even wider. Everyone gathered there also took notice of the outfit the boy was wearing. Like the others, he had made his own kimono. The one Subaru wore bore a title only he would truly understand, something deeply personal to him, the kimono of regression. The black fabric rippled gently in the cold night breeze, absorbing the surrounding darkness and becoming one with it. Its cut was traditional but carried a modern touch. The sleeves were slightly shorter than usual, allowing for freer movement, while the hem ended in an irregular pattern. Subtle grey lines ran across the fabric, like scars marking the story of his journey, forming geometric patterns that seemed to shift, depending on the angle of the light. The sash around his waist, the obi, was a vibrant orange, slicing through the black of his attire like a ray of hope amidst despair. The fabric was firm, yet not rigid, as if it had been made to embrace and support him through his hardest moments. At the center of the knot on his back, a small embroidered emblem of the company stood. His legs were covered by a fitted hakama, allowing him to move with agility without compromising the traditional aesthetic. Small golden traces decorated the edges, almost imperceptible, like distant stars in a dark sky. The Zori sandals he wore were reinforced, made for someone always on the move, and their orange straps intertwined around his ankles, giving the impression that flames ignited with every step. Around his neck, a thin black scarf swayed gently, made of a lightweight fabric that seemed to absorb the wind. On one of its ends, discreetly embroidered, were words only he could understand. Shi-she, business. Chakosi-I, love, an inside joke of his own due to his personal interest in the main figure of tonight's event, who had everyone's eyes on her. Finally, a dark metal chain hung from his obi, its links jingling softly as Subaru walked. Subaru, as everyone knows, today is a special day. For this person and for all of us. The birthday of our dear Anastasia-sama. Shouting at the top of his lungs, his tone was filled with great excitement as he reaffirmed what everyone already knew. This earned some amused glances toward the merchant, who maintained a simple smile on her face, not revealing whether she was genuinely excited or just holding back her feelings. Anastasia, Natsuki-kun is really making a big fuss over a lady's birthday. Don't you know some don't like to be reminded that they're getting older? Subaru, eh? Really? But you don't have to worry, Anatan. No matter how old you are, you'll still be the most beautiful. I truly believe that. Just like Mimi Prepre will always be the cutest, right, Hetero? Hetero. Yes, Lady Anastasia and my sister always will be. Yes. Forced into the spotlight, with nervousness and embarrassment, he agreed with Subaru's words when he felt everyone's eyes on him, while TV resigned himself to sighing in exhaustion over his brother surrendering so easily to Subaru's antics. Subaru placed his hands on his hips and puffed out his chest with pride, meeting Anastasia's gaze without hesitation, noticing a hint of amusement in her expression. They were in the garden. Well, not exactly a garden, more like an open space with several well-maintained areas. It was a large, well-kept open space belonging to Anastasia's company domains, serving as the stage for whatever Subaru had planned for tonight, a place properly prepared for his next actions. Subaru, without further ado, I'd like to present to you all my latest invention, a gift for Anatan and the world. Although he wanted to correct Subaru's way of addressing their lady, Julius refrained from doing so, allowing it just for tonight. In the air around Subaru, flames appeared, taking a physical form, a kind of bird. A bird not even half the size of Mimi, with a rosy belly, thick red plumage, a golden beak, intensely bright blue eyes, and a gigantic feather that resembled a sort of horn, blue at the tip, red in the middle, and orange at the base. Subaru's newly developed great fire spirit, Antares. Subaru, are you ready for the show, my friend? Antares, absolutely, Susu. Speaking in an enthusiastic tone, it flapped its small wings forcefully as it began to fly. Beating its wings rapidly, the people of Subaru's world might have thought that its wing movement and flight pattern resembled that of a hummingbird from his homeland. As it distanced itself a little, Subaru moved to join the group. Subaru, I hope you're all prepared, because this is going to be a grand show. Ricardo, I sure hope so, mini-boss, because just having kimonos as gifts would be interesting, but not enough unless they were exclusive for Our Lady. He warned with a threatening tone, heavily teasing Subaru's decision to make clothes for everyone using his skills and wasting so much time that could have been spent sewing an exclusive outfit for Anastasia herself. Meanwhile, Antares flew to the exact spot and with a flick of its tail feathers lit the first fuse. The fuse began to burn down. Sparks flew, and an intense hissing sound echoed as the projectile shot up into the sky. Whoosh! Suddenly, the darkness was torn apart by a golden explosion of light, followed by red sparks spreading across the sky like fiery petals. Almost everyone. Woo! Another burst followed quickly after the first, exploding in a brilliant blue pattern, then another in a vibrant green hue. To them it resembled the magic they had used during the hunt for the white whale, which had illuminated the entire sky, but this one produced colorful lights that quickly dissipated after their explosion in beautiful patterns. Mimi, so pretty, so cool. TV, what is this, Subaru? Subaru, this TV is something from my homeland. We call them fireworks. Joshua, fireworks, how are they made? What are they made of? Subaru, great question, Joshua-kun. This, my friends, is the result of gunpowder, a small black powder. Gunpowder is an explosive mixture made of three main ingredients: saltpeter, charcoal, and sulfur. The saltpeter provides oxygen for combustion, the charcoal acts as fuel, and the sulfur makes ignition happen faster. When we light a fuse connected to a container full of gunpowder, bam! The reaction creates a rapidly expanding gas, generating an explosion. Other fireworks exploded in the night sky, illuminating it rapidly before the colors faded and were replaced by new ones. Over and over again, in an incredible yet beautiful succession. Rays. What gives the colors, Subaru-sama? Subaru. Another great question. To create different colors, we add specific metals to the gunpowder. Copper creates blue, strontium gives red, barium produces green, and sodium generates yellow. When these metals burn, their electrons enter an excited state and release energy in the form of colored light. We use wooden or metal tubes to launch the fireworks and small compartments filled with gunpowder to create different shapes. Depending on how we arrange the explosive charge, we can create various patterns in the sky. With that said, new colors adorned the night sky in the garden. Subaru then gave a meaningful look to his fire spirit, who immediately understood the signal. Subaru. Now, let's see something even more interesting. As he spoke, Antares lit the next set of firework fuses. It began again. The rocket shot up. Whoosh! The fire quickly climbed into the sky and then exploded. But instead of just a simple ball of light, Hallibel's face was formed in purple light, with grey sparks still standing out against the night sky. Hallibel, what? More fireworks were launched, and soon the faces of Mimi, TV, and Hetero appeared in orange and bright green lights with white accents, personalized based on their hair, eyes, and standard clothing. The three of them, in turn, stared wide-eyed. Their faces were side by side, smiling in the sky, and as the triplets' faces faded into the air, another firework shot up. This time, Ricardo's canine face formed a gigantic smile, with a sword symbol right behind him. Ricardo, ha! Ha ha ha! Now this is beautiful! More fireworks, new explosions, this time forming the faces of Joshua and Julius in the night sky. Soon after came Zarestia's face in a white and green light, and when it dissipated, Razes appeared, his eyes shining intensely along with the great wind spirit. Zarestia, Su, how did you do that? Did you use some kind of magic? Subaru, no, Tia-chan, I just used science in the fireworks. To form the faces, all I needed was a shaped charge. Rays, shaped charge. Subaru, exactly, normally fireworks explode in all directions at the same time, but if we place small individual explosives arranged in a specific shape, like a circle, a star, or a face, we can mold the explosion so that it follows a defined pattern. From his pocket, he took out one of the cartridges that hadn't been fired yet and showed its interior. Inside, several small explosive spheres were arranged in a circular pattern. Subaru. Each of these little balls contains a bit of gunpowder and metallic salts to create the colors. Before launching, we align these spheres inside the cartridge in the desired shape. When the projectile explodes in the sky, these spheres are launched in a predefined pattern, creating the shape we want. Anastasia. So, you basically make the explosion follow a design. Subaru. Exactly. But it's a difficult process. If the gunpowder isn't distributed perfectly, or if the explosion timing isn't calibrated correctly, the design could come out all crooked. That's why I had to test it multiple times until I got it just right, and I used Otto to help me. That earned a small sigh from Otto, who remembered being a test subject, taking light explosions to the face that left him covered in soot multiple times, forcing him to wash up over and over again. Subaru gave a meaningful look to Antares, who understood the message once again, lighting the fuse of the last firework. This final firework was big and shot into the sky with a powerful whoosh, even greater than the others. When it reached its highest point, it exploded in multiple rainbow colors, golden, white, purple, and green, forming the complete face of Anastasia Hoshin with a big smile and her characteristic accessories. Everyone's eyes widened and sparkled again upon seeing such a display, but Anastasia's lost the neutrality that usually shaped her businesslike face. A genuine radiant smile spread across her lips, and her eyes glowed as the colors reflected in them. A magnificent spectacle. She was clearly excited, happy about the grand display. Subaru, yes. The celebration beside her made her glance to the side, while the lights of the massive explosion lingered longer than any previous one. Subaru stared at her with a huge smile and shining eyes, clearly as excited as a child who had conquered the world, looking at her without averting his gaze. Anastasia. What is it? Subaru. Nothing. I'm always happy when you smile for real. It's in these moments that I fall in love with you all over again." Declaring such words with enthusiasm, sincerity, and without shame despite his flushed cheeks, he spoke his thoughts directly to the girl beside him. This, in turn, made her feel something she rarely experienced: nervousness and embarrassment at hearing such direct words spoken eye to eye. A slight contrast between the one usually in control and the one at the mercy of his own emotions. "Subaru, so, did you like your gift?" Anastasia. While everyone else remained distracted, gazing at the sky, none of them noticed the duo standing slightly behind the group. They didn't see the merchant grabbing the young man by the collar, surprising him, and even more when she pulled him in. Normally, he wouldn't have been so easily pulled downward, but caught off guard, he gave in. At the same time, she also rose slightly to reach his height. In the middle ground, one being forced down, the other rising up, they met halfway. Their lips collided in a kiss, just as the fiery lights of the display dissipated, marking the end of the show. Without realizing it, the two remained locked in the kiss for a few moments before separating. Both faces flushed red. But while Subaru looked slightly shocked, Anastasia wore a genuine smile. "Subaru, what was that?" Anastasia. "Your reward for finally making me fall in love with you, you idiot." As she said this, she knew there was a slight lie in her words, because for quite some time she had already fallen for the honest young man in front of her, but only now did she allow herself to open up honestly to him after so long. Only now did she realize that it would be impossible for someone to say such things so shamelessly, with such a foolish face, without being hopelessly in love. At last, the love-driven greed of the boy with fearsome eyes from another world had surpassed the infinite greed of the mauve-haired merchant from Kararagi. Anastasia If, Chapter 4. Anastasia. Subaru-kun didn't seem well at all this morning or during the meal. Zarestia. Indeed, Sue seems quite tense about something. The two women commented as they sat enjoying the backyard and the view of the stars and the moon shining brightly in the sky, resting after the events of the day. It was something that would clearly exhaust many people, Anastasia among them, due to her work as a candidate and hostess to so many important, illustrious figures within her territory. She had gathered all the royal candidates in the city of Priestella under several pretexts, to improve her relationships with them, or at least create debts that bound them together. A decision aimed at a controlled political battle. After all, for her goals, keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. Those were Subaru's words when he accepted Anastasia's real intentions in bringing them together, which was more about negotiating and building better relationships under the public eye, for both the candidates and any external observers. With Crush's camp, they already had a good start thanks to past alliances formed through Subaru himself against the White Whale. A resounding victory that fortunately brought great fame to both camps. Naturally, due to the weight of eliminating such a legendary beast that had plagued the world for centuries, killing innocents and merchants alike, and even slaying the former sword saint, Theresia van Astria, one of the most skilled of her generation. This greatly improved the merchant's image in the kingdom. And if that wasn't enough, he also gave her another achievement, the killing of an archbishop, Sloth, within the lands of Marquis Mathers, thus securing two legendary feats that boosted the fame of her camp, while also strengthening relationships between them, especially between Crush and Emilia, and creating debts with her political rivals that Anastasia could readily use at the right moments. And that truly benefited her. It not only brought fame to Subaru as an inventor, negotiator, and strategist, but also to Zarestia as the spirit responsible for ending those two threats in the name of Anastasia's camp and Julius, who already possessed vast natural fame as a knight, and even more so as the greatest of knights. Speaking of other allied camps, Felt's camp was a bit hard to define. She seemed to like Subaru a lot, likely due to the help he and his companions gave her against Elsa in the loot house. Reinhard also seemed to treat him like a good friend, because Subaru treated him that way. Anastasia could even see a bit of jealousy in him due to their close relationship, which made her chuckle slightly. In her view, This was a good thing to keep negotiations and relations on neutral ground, especially since Felt seemed to dislike merchants or nobles in general, which would make things very complicated. Priscilla was a case of her own. Subaru got along with Al, but no one truly had a positive relationship with her, especially due to her arrogance and aggressiveness in many aspects. Still, Anastasia clearly remembered how Priscilla had laughed when Zarestia last year cut Roswell's pants in front of everyone during that incident caused by his dramatic performance with Puck. Their relationship might even be worse than with Felt's camp, which only had a poor connection with Anastasia due to her merchant status and ambition, something Anastasia wouldn't deny considering the girl's past. Priscilla's camp had poor relations with everyone, not just hers in particular. The relationship with Amelia's camp, however, was different from all the others, even tying back to the conversation the two had started earlier. Subaru had been the one responsible for rescuing Amelia in the royal capital, even though he insisted he hadn't done anything remarkable, as well as recovering her insignia, which was extremely vital information in Anastasia's opinion. He also saved the lives of those in the land of the half-elf's patron during the witch cult attack and the Sin Archbishop's appearance. So many special debts that her camp would never be able to repay without offering things of equal value. That would be impossible, even for the court mage, considering each favor could cost a fortune, something Anastasia, proudly thanks to Subaru, no longer needed from them, or resources like the mining in Elior Forest, which would be a great benefit for them. They couldn't refuse even if they tried 1,000 times. But then there was the matter at hand. Zarestia. Sue really seemed worried about that little furball. Anastasia. I wish I had your level of power or special abilities, Tia-chan, to be able to offend someone as powerful as another great spirit. Especially one with a title as strong as Beast of the End. It's a shame I'm not that strong. Zarestia. Yep, Anna's way too weak to insult someone stronger. She'd probably get beaten to a pulp before being torn apart, or at best, have her head ripped off. Anastasia. Ugh, you could be a little nicer, you know? Subaru-kun would say kind words about how I could make giants kneel with my negotiation skills and intelligence. Quoting some of the many compliments the dark-haired boy gave her, she puffed out her cheeks as she listened to Zarestia's teasing words about her physical strength and abilities in a head-on fight, especially against a great spirit like Puck. And speaking of him, not Amelia, but Puck seemed to make Subaru nervous, more than someone normally would be around a spirit with such a terrifying title. But what was making him feel that way? That question crossed her mind as she imagined his reasons, especially because Zarestia, An, De, Ve, Taer, Gol, Gel. The nicknames Zarestia gave to Subaru's spirits: Antares, fire; Deneb, water; Veja, earth; Altair, wind; Algol, yin; and Rigel, yang, besides Zarestia herself, who was Subaru's spirit more as an excuse than from any real need for his mana. Zarestia. They say that with a special bond, at least that's what I imagine, many spirits can sense and express their contractor's hidden emotions. I've never seen anything like that in all my years of life. So, if those little ones have been with Sue since they were babies, they must have a deeper connection, and I saw it firsthand today. Anastasia. Even if I don't completely understand it, it was easy to read those little ones. Zarestia. They were anxious, maybe that's the right word. Not just anxious, worried, scared. They even seemed ready to fight to the death. That kind of feeling only arises in the face of a monster or powerful enemy that needs to be taken down. Like some people felt toward me when they saw me, but this time it felt different. As if they were feeling that way because of something they've already been through and hated. Anastasia. Like a desire for payback or revenge, right? Nodding to confirm the merchant's deduction, the two became more thoughtful about it. Zarestia clearly remembered the way they had looked, moving nervously around Subaru, with auras of concern for the boy, as well as apparent anger directed at the feline-looking spirit when it appeared, summoned by Amelia the moment they met, when they were at the entrance, and he was with Julius, welcoming the rival camp. Something she remembered even from the day in the capital, when they had a meeting before the royal selection presentation. She could see how the spirits acted, and she felt this sensation coming from them and from Subaru himself at that encounter. A sensation she knew others normally felt towards her. It was strange, very strange, because it meant that the fact he was composed and unafraid when he met her, despite her power, showed that he had already met someone on her level, which narrowed it down exclusively to Puck. Anastasia. This could get rather complicated. Thinking of him being angry at a member of a rival camp, and such an important one to my rival with such high status. Don't look at me like that. I know I'm thinking from a business standpoint, but I also have personal concern for him. Zarestia. I really hope so. I don't know how Sue finds attraction in someone whose first thought is about coins. Anastasia. He already knew that when he said he was in love with me, Tia-chan. So of course, he wouldn't be surprised to see me thinking rationally about my campaign for the throne, especially considering the personal reasons I myself confessed to him. I'm acting the way he expects me to, while keeping a place for him in my mind, just as I've already reserved one in my heart. Zarestia. Humph, I thought only Sue could say cute things like that. Pouting, the assassin spirit puffed her cheeks at the merchant's eloquence. Anastasia. The focus here should be on thinking about what motivates him to feel anger and apprehension toward the great spirit of fire. Perhaps it has something to do with Subaru-kun's strange ability. Zarestia. Strange. Ability. Anastasia. I deduced it through you, Riza-san, my own spirit, who talks about that strange scent coming from him, connected to the cult, and the odd conveniences he experiences. Subaru-kun has a special ability that lets him stay several steps ahead in some situations. He may not have confessed it yet, either because he doesn't want to or because he can't, and the use of this ability may have some special trigger that causes him concern and anxiety. Which leads me to an unpleasant deduction about what could activate such a power. What matters is that I deduce he might be able to see probabilities and guide himself through the ones that will bring success to him, and to us. Zarestia. Aren't you afraid he might be using this ability to manipulate you? The spirit posed the question with narrowed eyes, full of suspicion. Anastasia kept a neutral expression, then let out a small smile. Anastasia. I don't think that makes sense. Zarestia. Anastasia. My answer. I could say I trust him because I have to, but that's not it, and I know it. I trust him because I want to trust him. More like, I can't imagine him as a manipulative mastermind. Is this what made me fall for him? Am I letting go of logic and reason in my business-like mindset because of sentiment? Not that I completely dislike the warm feelings I get in my heart, but sometimes I miss the days when all I had to worry about were my little ones and Ricardo. Grumbling as she spoke at the end, Zarestia couldn't help but show a small smile, because despite the apparent frustration in her words, which might have sounded like a complaint, her tone clearly showed she wasn't particularly unhappy about now being unable to doubt Subaru due to her feelings. Anastasia, what will you do about what we discussed, Tia-chan? Zarestia, I'll look after Sue. After all, I don't want to lose his food and we have a contract, and I don't want him to get hurt. Anastasia, you say I lie about my emotions and intentions, but you, Tia-chan, are trying to do just that. And in such an embarrassing way, you know? And there's no need for that when we're having a conversation between friends. Zarestia, don't provoke me, Anna. And what will you do? Raising an eyebrow, the wind spirit asked. In the boys' room with black hair. Subaru. Normally people would talk about this ahead of time, don't you think? Anastasia. In a relationship like ours, which is in progress, sometimes we should surprise each other, right? I thought this would be a surprise for you, and at the same time a reward for having won me over, and for us being on such good terms at the start of our relationship. Subaru. But a leap like this in the relationship might make some people think we're perverts or rushing too much. Anastasia. I already told you about my lifestyle and my condition. If I'm going to live a short life, then I'll bet on having a good one. A short, fulfilling life with no regrets, betting on what can bring profits to my company or to myself. Like my personal life motto, lose everything in the end or rise to the top before I die. The only way to know is to try. So, since I've already bet on being with you, I'm going to bet on deepening our relationship and see if it was worth it in the end. Subaru, I get it, but it still feels a little complicated for me, he said, glancing sideways at the girl beside him. In his room at the inn they were staying at in the city, rented by the merchant. The two were lying together. Subaru, I just wanted to know what made you come here. Julius would probably scold me if I got involved with you, since the royal selection rules specifically say the candidates shouldn't have romantic involvement until it's over. So that brings the question, why are you here now? Ark. His nose was pinched. Anastasia, didn't you hear what I said? I came here knowing the risks, all right? I reminded myself completely of the rules for all the candidates and simply said that for this situation, ignoring that last one would be best. Subaru. I understood that part, but I still wanted to understand better. Anastasia. I came here to comfort you. Subaru. Comfort me. Did I seem a little sad? Sorry if I made you worry by showing a gloomy expression. Anastasia. Not that much. It's because of you and the others expressing the things I feel in my heart that I can stay focused on what I need to do. That's why when you're a bit off or anxious, it becomes concerning, both for business and for a maiden's heart. Subaru. In other words, I don't like seeing you sad, so I came to cheer you up. That's so cute. Saying that, he pulled her close and cooed, rubbing his cheek against hers, a somewhat cute scene, even though the merchant puffed her cheeks at the childish tone used by the black-haired boy. She didn't deny the words he used to summarize the situation, because that was exactly it. Anastasia was worried about a sad Subaru. Anastasia, Tia-chan and I saw you looking worried about Emilia's fire spirit. Subaru, maybe I was, but you know who he is, so... Anastasia, but the gleam and your expressions were those of someone who had already faced the danger he represents in this world, Subaru. That's quite concerning for someone who doesn't know anything about your past. And when I say that, I mean someone who doesn't understand or wouldn't accept that you came from beyond the waterfall. That's why it worries both of us, especially me. And I'm not referring to my business or campaign to become queen. I'm talking about our relationship. Subaru. To be honest with you, completely open, I'm really worried about Puck-san. I can't explain it properly, and I don't even know if anyone would believe me, but I know how dangerous he can be when he's in a rage, especially when it involves Emilia-san. I get worried. Anatan, if something happens, please be concerned. Anastasia, aren't brave men supposed to say the opposite? Subaru, I'm an idiot, Anatan. I don't want to lie to you. If something involving him happens, Julius, Halsan, Tia-chan and I can handle it. Just focus on staying alive and safe. Anastasia, you ask me to do that and still say you'll take the risk knowing it'll hurt my heart. You really can be sweet and stupid, arrogant and kind at the same time, which just makes you a little more amazing and fun. But with that look of yours, I'll accept it. If something really bad happens, I'll handle it like I always have, and I'll let you all take care of things and spoil me afterward. Saying that, accepting there would be no negotiation against her boyfriend's serious expression, she wrapped her arms around him, returning the hug he was already giving her. This made him smile, a mix of happiness and relief. Anastasia, my goodness. When kids read stories, it's usually the knights who say such things to the ladies and princesses. Subaru, honestly, I can't see Julius taking off that armor of his to speak so openly, even though I think he could say something better than I can, and with his elegant tone and appearance, would melt the hearts of maidens far more than the stupid me. Ow, why did you pinch me? Anastasia, because I don't like it when you belittle yourself. Humility is good, but not when you can't see your own worth. If you want to live your life to the fullest, see yourself as gold, even if you're copper, and give yourself the value you deserve if you can prove it. I prefer the merchant without the armor, you know. Subaru. Those are two kind words coming from someone as cute as Anatan. Stop it, this unworthy idiot's heart can't take it anymore, Subaru said comically, receiving a mildly disapproving yet amused look from the girl in his arms. Little by little, with their exchange of words, his heart calmed. The two remained like that for a while, talking. enjoying the slightly chilly night in the city of Pristella and pushing away Subaru's thoughts about the monster he feared because of the cruel deaths he had suffered. He saw himself as a pathetic coward, because his fear of that cat-shaped creature still lingered even now after so much time. Even with his own great spirits and the support of Zarestia and Halibel, he feared that creature not only because of the trauma from the deaths he experienced, frozen and shattered while still alive, but because he feared that others he loved might suffer the same fate. His spirits, Halibel, Zarestia, even though Subaru believed she could survive, Reyes, Otto, Ricardo, Hetaro, TV, Mimi, Julius, even though he also trusted their skills, just like he trusted Halibel, and especially Anastasia with Echidna, who might be in worse combat condition than him. Even though Subaru strongly believed in her ability to defend herself when needed, but not against a being like Puck. Thinking of them suffering in such a way made him tremble with fear and worry. Anastasia, you're still feeling anxious. Subaru, I am. I'm sorry. I just can't stop worrying even in moments like this. I keep thinking about bad things. Anastasia, thinking about bad things while I'm right in front of you, seriously, that makes me feel bad and offended, you know? Especially since I came here so you wouldn't think about those things. Subaru, I'm really sorry, I'm an idiot, I didn't mean to. Interrupted by a kiss on the lips, he was slightly surprised. Anastasia, didn't I already tell you to stop doing that? Subaru, okay. Smiling softly, the two began kissing again, finding another way to ease the worries he had about the great spirit of fire.